Welcome to the classy Thursday edition of the St. Mark Spark. I'm glad to be with you this afternoon. As we begin this time together, we're going to read from the Psalm of the day from the lectionary. It's Psalm 100. Make a joyful noise to the Lord, all the earth. Worship the Lord with gladness. Come into his presence with singing. Know that the Lord is God. It is he that made us, and we are his. We are his people and the sheep of his pasture. Enter his gates with thanksgiving and his courts with praise. Give thanks to him, bless his name, for the Lord is good. His steadfast love endures forever, and his faithfulness to all generations. May this God's word speak to our hearts, our minds, our spirits. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. I remember singing this hymn when I was a kid in the church that we attended. We would sing the song, we will enter his gates with thanksgiving in our hearts. We will enter his courts with praise. We will say this is the day that the Lord has made. We will rejoice, for he has made me glad. Well, this is a reminder that we need to rejoice, not just on Sundays, not just at times we're at church or we're doing something specifically church related. We need to rejoice. And rejoicing means, as we rejoice every day, we rejoice in the beauty of the earth, but also in the beauty of relationships, in the beauty of a right relationship with God, a right relationship with one another. And with those rights come responsibility. A lot of folks, and we see this with mask wearing right now, we have people talking about, this is my right. And that's fine. But if you're not saying these are my responsibilities and you are my responsibilities, then we miss the mark. We miss the point of rejoicing in God. We miss the point of rejoicing in this day if we do not look after one another, if we do not care for our neighbors. And so we go to the main reading from James chapter 4, verses 13 through James 5, verse 6. And as we said earlier, James does not let us off the hook. James holds up a mirror in front of our faiths and says, this is who you really are. That is hard and that is difficult. That is real talk. It is if James is having an intervention, a spiritual intervention for all of us in saying, I love you, but these are the things you are doing wrong. I care for you, but these are the ways you're causing harm and hurt to yourself and hurt to one another. And so we go to James right now. Come now, you who say, today or tomorrow we will go to such and such a town and spend a year there, doing business and making money. Yet you do not even know what tomorrow will bring. What is your life? For you are mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wishes, we will live and do this, or we will live and do that. As it is, you boast in your arrogance. All such boasting is evil. Anyone then who knows the right thing to do and fails to do it commits sin. Come now, you rich people, weep and wail for the miseries that are coming to you. Your riches have rotted and your clothes are moth-eaten. Your gold and your silver have rusted, and their rust will be evidence against you, and it will eat your flesh like fire. You have laid up treasure for the last days. Listen! The wages of the laborers who mowed your field, which you kept back by fraud, cry out, and the cries of the harvesters have reached the ears of the Lord of hosts. You have lived on the earth in luxury and in pleasure. You have fattened your hearts in a day of slaughter. You have condemned and murdered the righteous one who does not resist you. May this God's word speak to our hearts, our minds, our spirits. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. This is the last time I'm going to be with you with the Spark this year. at least this liturgical year. We turn the page starting on Sunday to a new year. That means that we finish up this week with Christ the King, the reign of Christ Sunday, and then next week we start with Advent 1 in that preparation for Christmas, but also that preparation for Christ's return. Now, when we say Christ is the King, what does that mean for us? What does it mean when we say, talk about the reign of Christ, or the kingdom of Christ? Now, there are some folks, some brothers and sisters who are related, first cousins of the Presbyterian Church, who they say we have no creed but Christ. And so they don't have a book of confessions. I would like to kind of amend that a little bit to say we have no king but Christ. We talk about the kingship of Christ, which means that God, if Jesus is Lord, it means he's Lord over everything. We can't just pick and choose and say, well, Jesus is Lord over 10 o'clock on Sunday morning worship, or if we go to Sunday school, we give him an extra hour at 9 o'clock on Sunday morning. If Jesus is Lord, if Christ is King, that means over our whole life. And we might shudder a little bit and say, well, was he God over me this morning on my drive to work? Was he king over Friday night? Is he king over not just church, but also the home and work? And we worry about these things. We right to worry because we know that we don't make God in Jesus the king of everything. In fact, even in our political circles, and I love politics, we're told, humans are political animals. But we make kings out of presidents. We make kings out of political parties and political ideologies. We are reminded in the Book of Confessions, the Presbyterian Book of Confessions, from the Barmen Confession, from the Declaration of Faith, that this was written in the 1930s, early 1930s, by the German church when they saw what was happening, the authoritarianism that was happening with Hitler and with the Nazis, and they came together. They confessed. They acted with their confession by saying that it is Christ who is due our glory. It is Christ who is due our allegiance. That there is no king but Christ. It doesn't mean if there's no Führer that is above Christ. There is no monarch above Christ. There is no president above Christ. So this is the start of really what James is trying to get at in saying that you might have an idea of ways things that should go, but if you're not going to God first, then it's all folly. You perhaps have heard the old joke, the old saying that if you want to make God laugh, tell God your plans. And I've lived long enough to know that I make plans and God makes a way. That I make plans for things that I want and God prepares things that I need. And sometimes those lessons are hard lessons. Sometimes those things, frankly, feel too much that I can bear in the moment. But we never have to bear those burdens alone. We're told to take up our cross daily, but the cross we bear is also the cross we share with one another. And there are times that even in these times that feel like testing, where other people have come and they have borne part of my burden. And I too am called, and you are called, to bear one another's burdens. So we might make plans, but James is saying, what folly is that? What folly is that, saying, today or tomorrow I'm going to go to this town and make money, work there for a year, and we don't even know what tomorrow will bring. Instead, we need to say, if the Lord wills it, if it is in God's plans, then this will happen. But anything else is boasting, or it's arrogance. It's thinking that we have control over our lives. The last thing that James gets to in this passage is really hard, and it feels like a word of condemnation. It feels very prophetic, very much like the prophets from the Hebrew Scriptures, very much like what was going on in Egypt, except that the hearers are not, and we are not the ones who hear a word of comfort. In fact, we hear a word of challenge and condemnation. In the times of the Egyptians and slavery in Egypt, we're told that the cries of the Hebrews, the slaves, those who are being abused, those cries, they came up to God's ears, and God heard them, and God was going to send them a deliverer. Well, in today's passage, we hear that it's the other side. It's the cries of the people who work under us who are oppressed, who are crying out to God, saying, we need satisfaction, we need help. But continues what James has been talking about from the beginning. The theme has always been about caring for the poor, caring for the hungry, caring for the needy. But even more than that, today's reading says, woe to you if your workers, if the people that are working for you, who you are meant to take care of, are counted among the poor, who are counted among the hungry, who are counted among the needy. Woe to you if you are not paying them a substantial wage, a livable wage. Now, when minimum wage first came out, it was the idea in our country that it would be enough for a family, but we know nobody can live on minimum wage. And there's been a social push to increase minimum wage, and when I was growing up, minimum wage, it felt like, coming from my place of privilege, minimum wage was a starting job kind of thing. In fact, McDonald's has kind of built on that. They have an advertisement that says America's best first job. Now, that may or may not be true. My brother Scott worked at McDonald's. He might take some kind of exception at that when he got up early in the morning to make egg McMuffins for a hungry part of Springfield. But America's best first job, part of that is abdicating, saying that we're not meant to be a long time and a lifetime job, and yet we know. There are people who work at places like McDonald's. There are people who work at places like Walmart. There are people who work at these low-paying jobs that they have to work there and other places in order to make ends meet. We need to care about this. Now, there are different policy ideas. There's different bills that are there. I'm not advocating one thing or another, but as followers of Christ, James tells us we need to care about this. It's a hard lesson, but if it wasn't a hard lesson, it wouldn't be true. And if we don't listen to it, if we don't learn from it, then what James says is that we are in the midst of sin. Thanksgiving is upon us. A week from today, we'll gather. Some of us will gather with a small group. Some will be alone. We'll recognize that some tables are not as full as they have been in years past. We still need to count our blessings. We still need to be thankful. And as we enter and continue into a season of giving, we have to recognize that it's not just about us. It's about the people who are needy, the people who are broken, the people who are around us that we are called to care for as well. For you see, the cross they bear is meant to be the cross that we share. May our eyes be open to this truth. And then even in those times when we feel crushed, when we feel overly burdened, when we feel that we just cannot go another step or another day, may we trust that God will send others to help lift up that burden as well. We belong to one another. May we live like we mean it. And may God be with you this day and always. Peace be with you.